You're watching Reality Check. The question on the minds of Afghanistan and the world: will the real Taliban please stand up? The terror group claims it has turned over a new leaf and will run a less intolerant, more inclusive regime than last time. But confusion persists as to whether it can even keep up to that promise, given its own fragmented leadership. This man, Taliban founder Mullah Badadar, who arrived amidst cheers in Afghanistan last evening from Doha in Qatar, has attempted to present a moderate face to the world as the face of the political wing of the Taliban. He is widely tipped to be Afghanistan's new president. But another darker figure of the Taliban ecosystem also surfaced today. Anas Haqqani, Taliban leader and affiliated to his family's dreaded Haqqani network, senior meeting his one-time bitter enemies, former Afghan President Hamid Karzai and former Foreign Minister Abdullah in Kabul. A meeting seen as the first step towards a unity government in Afghanistan. Remember, at different times, including in its first press conference on Tuesday evening, the Taliban said that they were open to forming a government with quote-unquote all sides. But will those all sides include those like the Haqqanis, especially Anas's brother, the secretive Sirajuddin Haqqani, the head of the self-named network? The Haqqani network is being designated as a terror outfit by America. They built a reputation for extreme terror and violent attacks that at times has almost eclipsed that of the Taliban. They are, as we mentioned, a US designated terror group. Sirajuddin Haqqani himself is a specially designated global terrorist. The FBI has put out a reward for $5 million for any information leading to his arrest. They've been accused of attacks on US targets, including on Hamid Karzai. Some evidence of the Taliban's intolerance seen here during the first pushback to them since they took over. Protesters took out marches in support of the Afghanistan flag, like this one in the town of Jalalabad in the east, in reaction to the replacing of the national flag with the Taliban's colors. The Taliban has reportedly opened fire, agencies reporting that at least 3 people have been killed and more than a dozen injured. More evidence of the old Taliban, the vandalization of a statue of an anti-Taliban hero from the minority Hazara community in the town of Bamiyan, incidentally where the Taliban had in their earlier rule destroyed the famous Buddha sculptures. Again, despite claims of promising greater equality for women, a woman presenter on Afghan state TV put out this video where she says she was stopped from coming into work. She was reportedly replaced by a male presenter. All right, let me go across now to our panel. Omar Sadr is with us. He's a PhD, South Asian University, assistant professor at the American University of Afghanistan. Is with us Shashank Joshi, defense editor at The Economist. Is with us Hijratullah Rahimi. He's a medical student based in Kabul. Sonia Sarkar, freelance journalist who's just come back from Afghanistan. But let me start with Muslim Shirzad, the former senior presenter for political shows at Tolo News, which is the leading channel in Afghanistan. Now, Muslim Shirzad, you're a very active Twitter user as well, and you've been using social media to post videos of what's been going on in Kabul and elsewhere. Tell us about this question about what really do you make of this new Taliban? Because on one hand, they say that they will be much less brutal than in the past, but videos posted by you, including of the chaos at the Kabul airport, where you see crowds being pushed back, almost, there's firing, being beaten, that suggests a different picture.
Well, thanks for having me. Overall, if you see the situation on the ground, the Taliban is trying to give a little soft image and show that Taliban in 2021 is not the Taliban was in 2001. So that is why the Taliban is trying to give this message to international community, international media and Afghan people, But we should say, even if the Taliban changed a little, but Afghanistan in the last 20 years changed a lot. So that is why I believe that the Taliban should behave according to the situation. They should know the situation. They shouldn't do something which provoke the people against them. As, for example, we had reports about the Bamyan, about Kandahar today, and about Jalalabad. So these are something which the reality on the ground and the facts which the Taliban say and their action is not matching. So that is why, according to their facts.
That's a worry. Yeah. Omar Sadra from the American University of Afghanistan, what do you make of this? Because, you know, you have this whole kind of makeover, and then look at that brutal way in which the protests in Jalalabad were put down. At least 3 people killed.
Well, thank you, Srinivasan, for having me. I think that in the last couple of months, there was a constant effort for whitewashing Taliban and the way they have changed to make us believe that there is a possibility to engage with them politically and allow them to come over Afghanistan. However, we understood this earlier. Most of the researchers conducted by most of the Afghan scholars shown and indicated that the Taliban has changed, yes, but not towards positive. And they have become much more brutal, much more conservative, much more radical. The fact is that today's protest, at least to me, it indicates one simple fact, that there is certain consensus and national character in Afghanistan, that people agree on certain fundamental symbols, national symbols, and also certain ideas. Unfortunately, international media and policymakers constantly try to show that how fragmented Afghanistan is, and there is no consensus on certain political ideas and also symbols. But the way people stood up, despite the fact that they are brutalized, psychologically they are sick, they stood up to speak their mind and also to resist against Taliban imposed symbols, imposed ideas. That proves the fact that we are still alive when we have still the guts and also the courage to resist them, both militarily but also in a civic manner.
Right. Shashank Joshi is part of the problem, as I mentioned in my introduction, that the Taliban itself is not a cohesive force. You have people like Mullah Baradar who are trying to claim that they are more a kind of moderating influence. But then look at that, you have the Haqqanis who've surfaced. It was quite ironical actually, because the Haqqani network was actually attempting to assassinate people like Hamid Karzai. Now they're sitting across the table from him.
Which is a sort of phenomenon of many post-conflict situations. Look at Northern Ireland. You have former IRA terrorists sitting alongside British politicians that they once tried to blow up. What I would say is, yes, there is a distinction and a difference between the political commission, the public face of the Taliban in Doha, people like Mullah Baradar who have been posing alongside Mike Pompeo and Chinese ministers and others, and military commanders on the ground who have a right to say, we won this campaign on the ground, in the villages, in the towns, and so we demand a share of power and our say. But I think the underlying reason for the Taliban's effort to demonstrate restraint, and I think as your montage has shown, that is a mixed restraint. In some places the mask has slipped, isn't to do with any sort of infighting or tension between Doha Talibs and the military commanders. It's much more to do with the fact that this is the early days and the Taliban want to make sure they don't provoke a backlash from the international community.
Okay. So you're saying it's just, right, it's an attempt to say that at least for the early period, let's try and keep it together, even though it may be starting to fray at the edges. But Hijratullah Rahmini, you are still in Kabul.
Yeah.
And tell us your own experience of you know, what has Kabul been like now? It's been almost the 3rd or 4th day of Taliban control. Are you seeing a change, or is there still a lot of fear and concern about what's going to happen?
Assalamu alaikum. When they attacked the city, some people were worried that the Taliban will kill us. When they got all the country or all the places of Afghanistan, such as capital of Afghanistan, Kabul, at the first the people of Kabul were so worried that the Taliban will kill us, but they told to the people of Kabul, don't worry, we are like you, we are your brother. But some people were worried. By the passing of time, they make the government, or they take they bring the peace to the people of city by by passing of each day. The people of Kabul now feel peacefully, and they are like now don't have any problem with the Taliban of Kabul.
What has your own experience been? Have you had any kind of experience of running into the Taliban? Have you had a chance to talk to them, or have you run into them at all? आप मिले हैं उनसे?
Yes, I have seen, I meet a lot of them, but they are tell us, inshallah, we will be bring a peace, like it will be हम ऐसे सुलह ऐसे peace, inshallah we will be bring like peace that it's be acceptable for all the people of Afghanistan. Inshallah, I meet them. They told us, inshallah, we are like you, don't be worried, you are our brother, the government will be better by passing of each day.
Okay, so you're saying that you sense a change, but Sonia Sarkar, you were there, I think, in these past few days. Did you run into or have any encounter with the Taliban, and what was your sense?
Well, yeah, Srinivasan, it actually happened on Monday when we were called by the embassy that perhaps there is a chance of being evacuated on that night in a Air Force aircraft. So we, like a journalist was there with me in Kabul, and both of us basically thought that we'll take a taxi and go to the embassy, because there was no other way of reaching the embassy, and there was a curfew imposed apparently there. So we, of course, hired a reliable taxi driver, and he took us to the diplomatic enclave. But at the gate itself, the Taliban men were there, and they did not allow us to enter the enclave. And we did show our passport. They took away our passports for a while, and then the driver negotiated with them. Even then, they said, no, we cannot leave you because your embassy is closed, and come tomorrow morning. So we waited there for 3 hours, and we kept thinking how to go inside, because we have to reach the embassy to be part of that convoy who leave for the airport at midnight. So then again we negotiated. In fact, the local driver helped a lot, and then we said that fair enough. If you want to talk to anybody, any of your local commander, and would request the embassy to talk to them. So they said, okay, you connect us to your embassy people, and once they speak to the local area commander, we will let you go. Then they actually agreed, and they put us in their jeep, which is of course which was a police vehicle till Sunday, but now captured by them. So we boarded their vehicle, and they dropped us to the embassy. At the gate of the embassy, about 100 meters away, we saw the embassy vehicle, and then you actually went inside the embassy.
So there is some tension there even now, but it's not like there's that kind of extreme response maybe as earlier. But Muslim Shirzad, tell me that when you see people like the Haqqani brothers now emerging, taking a more mainstream role, does that worry you? That if that is going to be, if these people like them are going to be part of the government in Afghanistan, what does that mean?
Well, if we see the history of Afghanistan, regretfully we experience lots of like this. I personally say I'm not worried indeed. If there be a kind of acceptance from all sides, and we learn from our history. So this is the first point. The second one, who given this atmosphere, who paved the way for this situation, that right now Anas Haqqani, which once was in the captivate of Afghan government, now he is leading a group of Taliban, and he meets with the politicians in Kabul. This is the second one. The third one, regretfully we can say, the situation in Kabul and Afghanistan, beside of if we leave the Panjshir aside, is under the control of Taliban. So what we need right now is something, there should be a kind of toleration, there should be a kind of acceptance there should be a kind of inclusive government which everyone see themselves in that image. Otherwise, once again, Afghanistan will face a very tough and a long another civil war again.
God, okay, well, let's hope that doesn't happen. But tell me, Omar, because you're not, I believe, anymore in Kabul, but do you have family there? Are you worried for them?
Exactly, extremely worried, and I'm not much hopeful about the few days coming in future. But the way I think we need to be cautious about the nature of the Taliban, and also the way they try to pose to international media and international community. Their action speaks much louder compared to what they say. Of course, they are cautious of their audience. At the same time, they're also cautious of the fact that it's the early days and Americans are still in town, Kabul airport. So they might wait that Americans, once they evacuate completely, and also the leadership of Taliban come to Taliban, and then they will start much of their policies
and your own
forcefully and directly.
And your own loved ones and family?
Well, they are still in Kabul, and there is my fear is that because of probably my affiliation with the American University of Afghanistan and the way I have been speaking against Taliban, they have already started door-to-door searching of social media activists and special forces and government officials. So exactly, I have the fear that my family would be tortured because of my political thinking and the way I had been active in the last several years.
That really worry. I feel worried just listening to you speak, and that's such a challenge when we try to get voices like this on our shows. It's always this challenge about the the implications of that. But tell me, Shashank, are you getting a sense that the Taliban is committed to having some kind of inclusive government, or is it just going to end up becoming a completely Taliban government?
Well, they certainly are keen on having the appearance of a broad-based government. You show in the pictures of Hamid Karzai and others. They have asked the health minister to stay on. They have asked the mayor of Kabul to stay on. I have sources telling me that they've asked army specialists to stay on to operate advanced equipment. They don't have technocrats. They don't have managers. They haven't actually delivered services in large parts of the country. They have piggybacked on state provision. So they have no choice but to co-opt many elements of the old Afghan state and find compromises. It doesn't mean they're liberal, it doesn't mean they're nice or gentle or reformed, but it may mean they have to make pragmatic compromises on the ground. Now, having said that, having Hamid Karzai in your government doesn't make it inclusive. Inclusivity is much broader than that. It means you listening to women, to civil society, to tribes and clans across the country, to different regional and ethnic groups. Those are important questions. And I think, for me, right now, I think it's more likely that the Taliban want the appearance of inclusivity, a fig leaf of a broad-based government. But let's see, because they will know very well the reason this Afghan state built by the Americans over 20 years at the cost of $1 trillion plus collapsed is because it was overly centralized. It didn't have, it disenfranchised outlying provinces, other ethnic groups, other tribal groups. It was overly concentrated in Kabul. And the Taliban are not immune to that problem. They have managed to flip various militias, local governors, local groups, but it doesn't mean they permanently have bought them or that there's a harmony of perspectives. So they have the same dilemmas, the same problems that every single entity that has tried to govern Kabul has done for decades. And I think that will have to weigh on them when they form what they claim will be an inclusive government. And, the jury is out, I think.
Right, yes, jury is still very much out. But Hijratullah Rahimi, I wanted to ask you that, about that question that you said that people are welcoming them and all that. But what about the women? Are the women welcoming them? Because apparently you see very few women now on the streets of Kabul.
So some women up to now they are scared that Taliban don't give us our rights. So absolutely, or they correctly the Taliban say to the women, we will give you your right according to the Islam. What is your right in Islam? We will give you according to them your rights. But some women that they want democracy, they will not accept. And yesterday, the judge out behind the, or the judge into the court, they make crushed that we want our rules, our rights. But,
no, because like we saw, the woman presenter on the state TV, she was taken off air. I mean, I must say, very bold of her to make this video, but she was taken off air.
So, but softly, the Taliban said to the women, all the women of Afghanistan, we will give you rights according to Islam. But if any women want to live into the, Afghanistan, they should apply Islamic rules. If the women don't want to live to Afghanistan, they can go another out of the country. But we will just give the rights according to Islam.
Right. Sonia, did you see in that brief time you were there, did you actually see that transition, like women increasingly going off the streets? We also saw images of, pictures, posters of women being painted over and whatnot.
Yes, that happened on Sunday itself. In fact, the moment there was a transition of power and they started painting, whitewashing those posters, and of course, there were women all over on the other days when I was there, when I reached Kabul. In fact, I attended a wedding in Kabul and I came back at 10:30 in a local taxi, and there were, in that particular wedding, there were women and they were dancing, and of course there was separate section for men and women as per their custom, but there were women there. And then there was somebody, a friend of mine, who came back from a wedding at 1 o'clock in the morning. So this is the kind of life we live in a city like Delhi. And so there was, for them, the liberal and progressive women, Kabul was just another city. But the day Taliban took power, things started changing. In fact, this afternoon itself, I spoke to a woman I met there, and she said, we really want to gather strength and step out. But somehow we cannot believe them. In press conferences, they may say that we will not have any discrimination against women. But at the same time, we know the moment we are out, perhaps we may be attacked. And we have to follow the boundaries that they set for us. And that's something which is not acceptable.
So last question to you, Omar, that is there a little bit of feeling of frustration or helplessness? Because in the past, at least there was the Northern Alliance, there was some resistance, some challenge to the Taliban. This time, of course, we're seeing some of these marches and stuff, but otherwise, nothing really.
Well, I must say, not feeling of helplessness, but of course a sense of frustration. Frustration on international community, the way they abandoned Afghanistan, and not only abandoned, but they have handed over Afghanistan to the Taliban. A frustration on our politicians, the modern one, and including the traditional and the modern one, the way they are incompetent, they were corrupt, and one of the basic causes of the failure of the state and collapse of the state was their incompetency. So we have that sense of frustration, but still, I think there is a huge potential of a resistance. This resistance could be military resistance, again, in the way it happened under Ahmad Shah Massoud, or but what already we have is a civil resistance, which is taking place across social media and Twitter and Facebook. The resistance that people are coming on the street.
All right. Well, let's see how that unfolds. We're already seeing those visuals of Ahmad Shah Massoud's son in the redoubt of Panjshir, along possibly with Amrullah Saleh. Let's see how all of that plays out. But thank you all so much for joining us. We're out of time. Thank you so much for watching Reality Check. Good night.